On March 1, 2011, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Gisela Daoud heard her phone ringing. An unknown number appeared on the screen. It was a police officer from the city of Valence, asking if she was the mother of Samira Ben Saad. She answered yes. Gisela couldn't understand why the police were looking for her 20-year-old daughter, Samira. She hadn't seen her for 3 days. The woman demanded an explanation of what was happening. But the police response did not calm her at all. The caller stated that they were searching for Samira because her boyfriend, 22-year-old Mael Combier, had gone missing. The police had discovered that the young couple had been dating for 8 months. However, Gisela knew nothing about the guy. Samira and Mael had met at a party. Samira Ben Saad was a very beautiful woman who was aware of her attractiveness. She wanted to become a model and loved posing for photographs. Mael, in turn, was also a very nice and pleasant young man. There was an immediate mutual attraction between them, and they started seeing each other. However, on February 28, 2011, at 9:45 p.m., Mael's boss from the construction company contacted the police. He was worried because he hadn't heard from his employee for 3 days. On Saturday morning, the guy came to work, and then his phone rang. He quickly got up and left without any explanation, and no one had seen him since. On Monday morning, his boss was surprised that he still hadn't shown up. They considered him a punctual and responsible employee, and it was the first time he didn't come to work. His boss found out that Mael wasn't answering calls from colleagues and friends, so he decided to contact the police. First, the police went to the guy's home in the city center of Valence, but it yielded no results because no one answered the doorbell. His car was not at the house either. On the same evening, the police talked to Mael's mother. She hadn't received any news from her son for 3 days and added that during their last meeting, he had behaved very unusually, being extremely emotional and tense. The woman mentioned that her son hugged and kissed her and said he loved her, something he had never done before. The details uncovered by the investigators seemed very suspicious. Mael and Samira disappeared on the same day without explaining anything to anyone, and had not contacted their families for 3 days. It couldn't be a coincidence. One clue came from examining their phones. The investigators found out that Samira and Mael didn't just leave at the same time, but they left together in Mael's car. The phone pings revealed that on Saturday, in the middle of the day, they headed to Nice, and in the evening, they checked into a luxury hotel on the promenade. The investigators contacted the hotel and learned that there were surveillance cameras capturing 2 guys and a woman. The description perfectly matched Samira and Mael. They left Nice on Sunday morning and arrived in Livorno, 400 kilometers east of the border between France and Italy, by the evening. The young couple was clearly heading further into Italy, and the French police sought assistance from their Italian colleagues. Mael had booked a room in a prestigious hotel in Livorno. The hotel staff confirmed that a guy and a woman matching the description of the missing couple had stayed with them. So, Saturday evening was spent in Nice, and the next day they headed to Livorno. Everything indicated that Samira and Mael had embarked on a spontaneous romantic journey, especially considering that the Riviera was conducive to such adventures. The detectives believed that the young couple would soon return home together, and they had no reason to doubt this theory, especially since Samira's mother received a message from her daughter stating that she had left but there was no need to worry because she would return soon. It seemed like it should have been another confirmation that everything was fine with the young couple, but Gisela was certain that her daughter would never disappear just by impulsively leaving for a trip. Samira was a responsible woman who never missed work. There was another detail that troubled Gisela. She couldn't understand how her daughter, who loved being photographed and never left the house without meticulously applied makeup, styled hair, and carefully chosen clothes, could go away for several days with a young man without taking any belongings with her. She was also puzzled by the fact that Samira sent an SMS. The thing is, she would usually just call her mother. They were close and could talk for hours, so receiving a text message didn't calm her down. Instead, it only worried her even more. The next news about the case came from the city of Imperia, located in northern Italy, approximately 80 kilometers from Nice. On Monday, March 3, 2011, Massimo Bessone was on his way to work when he turned onto a small street to take a shortcut. Along the road, he noticed something strange. At first, he thought he saw a mannequin, but when he opened the door, he realized it was a woman. Massimo shouted something but received no response. However, the woman was clearly moving. He quickly called for an ambulance. Italian police determined that she was the missing French woman. Someone had shot her in the back of the head, and the bullet had lodged in her skull. The theory of a romantic trip could now be discarded. The French police were perplexed. Initially, it was a case of suspicious disappearance, then they thought it was a love-related escape, but now they were dealing with a girl who had been wounded in an attempted murder. Samira was alive but in critical condition. She was immediately taken to the hospital, and her mother was informed. When Gazella arrived at the hospital, she didn't even recognize her own daughter at first. It's difficult to describe the sight. Samira's head was shaved bald, and she resembled a 9-year-old child. The woman refused to believe that her daughter ended up in Italy with a bullet in her head. The doctors told the mother that there was little hope since the bullet was lodged in her daughter's skull. But Gazella didn't want to accept that and arranged for Samira to be transported to a hospital in Marseille. There, a surgeon informed her directly that he would perform the operation but wouldn't provide false hope. Even if the patient survived, she would never fully recover. Samira underwent a 10-hour operation. Although she made it through the surgery, when she opened her eyes, she didn't recognize anyone and couldn't speak. She had to relearn everything like a young child. While Samira couldn't tell anything about what happened in Italy, the police had to search for the culprit without her testimony. Many indications pointed to the crime being planned. She was found lying on the side of the road near a landfill, and the Italian police couldn't find any of her belongings. There was no purse, no phone, no passport. This indicated that the perpetrator wanted her to remain unidentified. However, the investigators had a lead. The last person Samira was seen with was her boyfriend, Mael Combier. The police believed that Mael crossed the border into Italy to commit the crime and then fled. However, he made a mistake by using his bank card in France after Samira was found. He used it at a first-class hotel in Les Tourettes, just 35 kilometers from his apartment in Valence. Surveillance cameras showed that Mael had returned to France a day earlier. But if he was innocent, why didn't he go home to his family? Instead, he stayed in a hotel just a few kilometers away. Soon, he made another mistake. Investigators discovered that he had used Samira's credit card. In other words, the young couple embarked on a spontaneous trip to another country, where the woman nearly died, and Mael stayed in a hotel and used her card. Everything confirmed the police's worst suspicions. To search for a motive, the detective spoke with the family and friends of the young man. It became clear that Samira and Mael's relationship was far from perfect. Samira was a very beautiful woman, and many men showed interest in her, which bothered Mael. Their arguments often escalated into physical violence. Mael could slap Samira in front of their friends, and there was even an incident where he extinguished a cigarette on her. Obviously, he couldn't be considered a very stable person. But the question of the motive remained open. Did Mael act in a fit of rage, or was everything planned in advance? All their friends knew that Samira was infatuated with Mael despite his behavior. However, she recently found out that her boyfriend was married. He had gotten married to his girlfriend at the age of 18, and frequently cheated on her. Samira was far from being his only mistress. She was angered by the revelation but didn't break up with him because she believed Mael's claim that they were in the process of divorce and living separately. Upon discovering this, the investigator went to Mael's home. But as soon as he entered, he realized that Samira was mistaken, and the husband and wife were clearly living together. Furthermore, Mael was soon to become a father. The apartment had 17 ultrasound photos with the name Combier written on them. It was evident that Mael, his wife, and Samira were involved in a love triangle, and one of them was destined to disappear. It was necessary to find Mael, and it turned out to be much easier than the police had anticipated. Mael Combier surrendered himself 5 days after the disappearance, appearing at the Valence police station on March 4. This was an incredible stroke of luck for the investigation. Mael not only came to the station voluntarily but also directly confessed that he was the one who shot Samira. He then proceeded to recount what had happened. The young man claimed that Samira was just an acquaintance with whom he could spend pleasant time. Their relationship had no future, and she knew it. Mael explained that their romance had come to an end, but Samira couldn't accept it. She didn't give him a moment's peace, constantly calling him and sometimes dialing his number 150 times in a single day. He showed the investigator his phone, which displayed evidence that Samira had called him approximately 1,000 times in a month. Mael's words confirmed that Samira's behavior could be classified as stalking. But could this be considered a justification for shooting her? Soon, the situation escalated to the point where the young man feared for his life. He recounted what happened on the Friday evening before their departure to Italy. Samira confronted him in a nightclub while he was kissing another woman. She stormed out of the club, scratched his car with her key, and they began arguing, which escalated into a fight with Samira's cousins. This incident terrified Mael because they claimed to have weapons and threatened to kill him. Mael was in a panic. He quickly got into his car and left the nightclub, deciding that he needed to come up with a way to protect himself in the future. The idea of acquiring a weapon for his own defense crossed his mind. The next day, when he received a call, he impulsively left and went to buy a revolver. However, all of this still didn't explain why he shot Samira. Mael explained that he didn't go to Italy to kill her or commit any other terrible act. He simply wanted to put an end to their troubled relationship. He drove Samira to Italy to calm down their heated emotions and explain everything to her. But things didn't go as planned. They argued again in the car, and Mael got out. Samira followed him. According to Mael, he grabbed the weapon with the intention of scaring her but had no intention to shoot. However, the revolver went off accidentally. Afterward, he left her lying on the ground, got back into the car, and drove away. When asked why he didn't call for an ambulance, he said he was scared when she fell. He went into hiding for several days because he didn't know what to do. The rest of the story was already known to the police. Overall, the man claims that he was the victim of his obsessive lover's pursuit, and what happened in Italy was an accident. He was arrested for attempted murder, but his explanation didn't fully convince the police. Some pieces didn't fit together. Why would someone travel to another country and stay in a luxury hotel just to end a relationship? Why did he take all her personal belongings and then use her credit card? And who sent the message to Samira's mother from her daughter's phone? The investigator had no doubt that the young man was lying, but it was difficult to prove without Samira's testimony. Fortunately, over time and with therapy, Samira was able to provide her testimony. At first, with a weak voice and very slowly, Samira began to speak. On October 11, 2011, 8 months after the attack, she recounted her version of events. Samira's words contradicted the claims of her former lover. He came to her home, stating that they needed to talk. She didn't want to, but he insisted, so she relented. Mael invited her for a weekend getaway. She asked where he wanted to go, and he replied, Spain. This didn't sit well with her, so he took her to Nice instead, and from there, they went to Italy. After 2 days of leisure, on the 3rd day of the trip, Mael unexpectedly veered off the road. When asked why he turned onto a road leading to a landfill, he reassured her not to worry because he simply needed to dispose of something. Mael stopped the car and got out. He opened the passenger side door for her to exit and retrieved a revolver. Pointing it at her, he declared that she would die. "Shoot if you're a man," she exclaimed. And he fired the gun. On February 7, 2012, a year after the attack on Samira, forensic experts found the revolver, and this discovery completely refuted Mael's claims. According to his version, the gun in his hand unexpectedly went off. However, ballistic analysis showed that such an event could not have occurred. The expert explained that before firing, the shooter needs to carefully prepare, pull the trigger back and then shoot, which involves two distinct actions. You cannot simply wave your hand for the revolver to fire. Furthermore, to pull the trigger of the revolver backward, one needs to hold the weapon with one hand and apply significant force to accomplish the action with the other hand. Accidentally firing such a firearm was utterly impossible. Maël Combier lied. He wanted to kill Samira, and after several months of investigation, detectives were able to reconstruct the plan that the murderer had conceived. On February 26, 2011, at 9 a.m., Maël left work. He was determined to avoid a repeat of the previous night's scene at all costs, so he purchased a weapon. Heading to the woods, he tested it, loaded it, pulled the trigger, and fired. He had planned everything. After a romantic weekend in Italy, Samira was supposed to disappear on the other side of the border. Italy served as the perfect country to commit the crime since he had no connections there. Driving off the road, Mael pulled the woman out of the car, declared he would kill her, and shot her. Then he took her belongings to prevent her identification. Returning to France, Mael attempted to mislead the police by sending an SMS to Samira's mother. Everyone was supposed to believe that the woman had gone on a trip and was still alive. The guy believed he had committed the perfect crime and was confident that he would never be caught. Imagine his surprise when he discovered that his victim had survived. While the police were searching for him, he spent 5 days hiding near his hometown, contemplating his next actions. He lacked the means and useful connections to escape, so he devised a new strategy for self-defense. Maël Combier decided to go to the police and present his version of events. On February 10, 2014, the trial of Mael began in the city of Valence. The trial was a real ordeal for the victim and her family. To their immense surprise, Mael did not deviate from his version of events. He insisted that he was the victim in this case, and Samira had been harassing him, and everything that happened in Italy was an unfortunate accident. His friends stated that he had never been an aggressive person and purchased the revolver out of fear after threats from Samira's cousins, who had threatened to destroy his apartment, car, and kill Mael himself. He hid nothing and went on a trip to Italy in his own car, taking his phone with him. He simply wanted to take the woman on a trip to calm her down, as he was emotionally exhausted from Samira's constant call. It is also worth noting that Mael conducted himself with exaggerated politeness and respect during the trial, effortlessly charming the jury, and his strategy paid off. He was sentenced to 13 years of imprisonment. The lenient sentence made many wonder if there was a connection between Mael's behavior in court and the relatively short duration of the sentence chosen by the jury. After all, people often associate criminals with unpleasant personalities, and it is difficult for them to convict a charming young man with excellent manners. Samira considers this punishment too lenient, as by the time he turns 40, he will be a free man, able to live a normal life, while she will forever remain bound to a wheelchair simply because she loved a man who decided to kill her. The surgeon explained that during 1 year of therapy, Samira regained 80% of her abilities, after which the effectiveness of rehabilitation sharply declined, leaving her dependent on the help of others for the rest of her life. She admits that she was willing to do anything for love, and this is how he repaid her.